This is the Sick'em Podcast, presented by your friend in the car business, Alan Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat in Waco. Online at alansamuelsdcj.com. The Sick'em Podcast is a production of Baylor Athletics. Now, here are your hosts, Brooke Bednarz and the voice of the Bears, John Morris.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's Sick'em Podcast, a production of Baylor Athletics. Glad you're with us this week. John Morris, Brooke Bednarz, and pleased to have as our guest this week, Doug Smith. Say it ain't so, but I'm afraid it's going to happen. Doug Smith retiring from Baylor University in his 23rd year here at Baylor, his 48th year as in fundraising of some sort in college athletics. Doug, we're not going to know what to do without you around here.
Well, now people can start calling me a short timer and not treat me very nicely anymore because I'm now down on a level way below them.
No. Not at all. We wanted to, thanks for letting us do this because we really wanted the opportunity to visit with you before you go out the door, before you and Lorraine go off in whatever you're going to do now. But so many years, so many stories, so many people you've touched here at Baylor. And that's just Baylor. I mean, other schools prior to Baylor also. Doug, you've had a rich career, haven't you?
You all are building everything up a lot more than I think it has been. But, I go back to other schools. When I went back to OU a couple years ago, a gentleman that I gave a parking pass to, assigned a parking pass to in 1991, still had the same parking pass.
Wow.
And he invited me every year when we came up to Oklahoma to come by his parking space, his tailgate space. And he said, Doug, do you know how to get here? And I just remember things like that. Yeah. But it was really amazing that someone back in 1991 still had the same pass. Now, I would say since he didn't improve his location any, he probably didn't give more money after 1991. So that's the way I think. But that's the guy's name was Doug Hamilton, and I will always remember, holy cow, this was a long time ago, and he has the same tailgate space that I assigned him in 1991. And, they didn't have a Sooner Club back then. They didn't have anything, but they had a fundraising organization. I think I came in 1 year after Barry Switzer, maybe it was 2 years after Barry Switzer, and we started the Sooner Club. And they still have the Sooner Club today. Wow. So, I remember things like that. And when I talk to people at Oklahoma, I always bring up the question, do you know what the Sooner Club is? And the answer always is, of course I do. And if they don't, then I know they're not interested in athletics.
That's true.
So anyways, but that's a little story that it's really amazing that I remember and he remembers me. And we still talk to one another. I texted him a few weeks ago that I was retiring. And he immediately, within 10 seconds, called me, and we talked for about half an hour.
That's great.
You've had a very long, successful career at a lot of different schools. We spoke with some people this week, and they just refer to you as a builder. You would go in and you would build and start. You mentioned the Sooner Club, SMU over at the Mustang Club. And then here at Baylor, you took it from what it was, and we're going to talk about the legacy that you have here and everything. But I do want to go back to 1998 and what ultimately brought you to Waco, because you did try to take a little detour, and God was like, no, come back to Waco.
That was Tom Stanton. As a matter of fact, when David Bourne came in as president at the University of Oklahoma, he and Donnie Duncan, who was the AD and had hired me, Donnie went his ways, and President Bourne decided that he didn't want any of Donnie's senior staff, so we were all released except for Larry Nafee, who was the compliance director, and Larry, I think, is still in the same position at Oklahoma today. So anyways, I sent out my resume, but I really called about 3 or 4 people, and probably about 3 days after it was out that I was no longer at Oklahoma, I got calls from Tom Stanton at Baylor and from Bobby May, who was the athletic director at Rice University at the time. And I really wanted, since I'd been to OU, I grew up in Toronto, Canada, I made the mistake of saying, I want to go back and live and work in a big city. And so, excuse me, I did that, but I found out very quickly that Rice University, from an academic standpoint, is just tremendous, but it wasn't that good. The reputation on the athletic side wasn't as good. And I started talking to donors who indicated to me, Doug, I'll make a gift, whatever, but I'll make it to the academic side, not to the athletic side. So I learned in about a year that, no, this isn't going to be me. I want to stay in athletic development. And to Tom Stanton's credit, he would call me every 2 or 3 months. How you doing, Doug? How you doing? We're going to have a position for you, so just get ready. So after a year and a half, I called Tom, and we met, and I came up here and interviewed, and I guess the rest is history. But I really was disappointed that I couldn't stay longer. I didn't stay longer, and Bobby May was great AD, very, very upset that I was leaving, and a couple of the donors there were really upset I was leaving too. So, but anyways, it was the best move I made, and so coming here, it was different. It was a small town, much smaller than it is today. Our athletic program, Kim Mulkey hadn't been here. Our top program at the time, John, and you will know this, was men's tennis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I think, was it 2004?
Right.
Was the first year we won a national championship. So that got us going. But 12 years of losing football, and it's not losing, but we didn't have winning records, and so that took some time. So anyways, it's been great. I loved it at Baylor. The people are different. The school is different. The Christian atmosphere is so important to me. And the friends, they're so warm. I'm just telling you, Baylor people don't realize it, but they are so much kinder. They're just different than, and I'm not being negative, but when you go to Oklahoma or SMU, it's just a different group, and they seem to care more for people. And so, that, again, is part of the reason I stayed. And as I mentioned, Brooke, before, I finally wanted to see at all these schools, I would go in and develop programs. It takes a year to analyze what's wrong. Then you take the second year to put in your system, and then the third year you just wait and see how, and you tweak it here and you tweak it there, and then they're ready to go. Well, so I would be saying 3 at the most 4 years, and then I'd move on to another school. And I finally said, I've been doing this my whole life, not thinking that I'd ever be here as long as I am. I'd like to stay at a school and just see what my early works did. And I say mine. It's not me. It's never me. It's always a team effort. And I tell people teams are so important. I've always been involved. I played semi-pro hockey in Canada, team sport. I played softball, loved softball, football. So it's always been a team sport. So it's people. It's not individuals. And that's just so important.
Tell me a little bit about going off of the theme of team. No, this is good. This is good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you might be leading me in a certain direction.
No. This is the team concept and the fun drives. Something you were known for when you first started, back when it was a tough time to come by a win for the football program, and that kind of makes things difficult for you on the fundraising side. So tell us a little bit about that team concept in the fund drives and how you implemented that here in Waco, and kind of how you made other people feel a part of the team.
It was a long process, but I think the Baylor people were starving for success, and everybody understood and realized how important raising money, particularly for the student athletes. I mean, what better thing to raise money for than for the student athletes' scholarships? So the people were really, I think they just were waiting to be told what to do. And they really did not have any idea. So I came in, and with a couple people, I took my executive committee from the board of directors of the Bear Foundation at the time and explained to them the team concept, that I wanted to have two different divisions. As I said, we followed baseball, so we had a national and an American league, and then we had teams and commissioners, and we'd try and get 5 teams in each division, so we'd have 10 teams, and they were to get 10 people, so there was 5 teams in one with 10, so that's 50 people, and 50 people in the other, so that's 100. So it took a while, but I wanted fun. I've always believed that you'll do more. You'll be a better producer for if you have two things. One, obviously, you have to be organized, but you have to have fun. And if you don't have fun, if people don't enjoy it, they aren't going to feel a part of it. And then when you have to let them know that it's your success, not my success, it's your success, and we're doing what we are because of you working hard. And boy, I would tell them, hey, you better have your next door neighbor become a Bear Foundation member, or you're just not going to be a part of it. And they never thought of anything like that. So, but we had fun. We gave awards early on when we had these big trips, and the Chicago trip, and then on down to Notre Dame. I mean, it was just such a big incentive. So the people raising the most money would get these complimentary trips and things like that. But you just had to have fun. And like I said, people just wanted us to be successful, and were waiting to be told what to do. And so the team concept, that's all I ever knew. I'd gone around the country. I would speak at conventions and talking about the team concept. And one of the things that I realized is early on, the big schools, I remember a person that had worked for me for some time was the AD at the University of Tennessee. And he called me one day and he says, Doug, we don't need people like you. And I was really surprised. He doesn't need people like me. He said, all we need to do is send out a ticket request, and that they have to give this amount of money, seat options, but they didn't know what it was. And he said, so we don't need you doing that. We can do that. So the team concept would never work here. So I did realize that most of the schools that I worked at, 7 other schools, when I would get there, they weren't very successful, and their fundraising wasn't very good, and it didn't work with schools that were very successful. So, that's fine. That's fine. And one of my favorite stories is when I was hired at SMU, and Russ Potts was the AD, and he was the one that created Mustang Mania along with Brad Thomas, and that was unbelievable. But I remember going into his office my first day or second day on the job, and he said, Doug, how much money do you think you can raise for us this year in athletics? And I said, Russ, what do you want me to raise? That wasn't a good answer. All right. But he said, well, can you raise $200,000? And I'll never forget, I nearly fell off my chair. I said, Russ, if I only raise 200, and there's the I that I shouldn't be saying, if I only raise $200,000, you fire me on the spot.
Wow.
And he was never surprised at anything. He was surprised at that answer. And I think we raised somewhere between $800 and $1 million that first year.
Wow.
At SMU.
Great success stories everywhere you've gone, really, including here at Baylor. Am I right in saying your first year here, so 1998 here at Baylor, the Bear Foundation raised about $800,000. $800,000. So similar to what you said there at SMU. So this year or this past year?
This past year, we're pretty close. On average, now you guys raise $12 to $13 million a year for our student athletes and their scholarships, and that is just beyond impressive. I feel like we should have like a round of applause.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
That's amazing.
But you do notice that we don't have the team concept anymore.
No, we don't have it. And that's all credit to our fans and the Baylor family.
Yeah, the more successful you get,
that's true.
The least important that team concept is. Correct.
But at the time, it was perfect for Baylor. It was perfect for Baylor.
It really was.
Can I tell you that I remember the first year, whatever it was, that we topped $1 million with the Bear Foundation, and that was so it was probably 99 or 2000, right around in there. And that was a huge deal, to top the $1 million mark in Bear Foundation donations.
We have every one of the early presidents have a picture on their wall. At halftime of one of the games the following year, we would make up this big, huge check that was about 10 feet by 5 feet or 4 feet or whatever, and we would go out at halftime and have a photograph taken with the president, with the athletic director, and with the president of the Bear Foundation and the executive committee, and it was really, really something. So, yes, that really was. And everybody just had such a great feeling. But to answer your question, you start winning football, you get great players in here, and it just happens. So it's really amazing how important winning is. But it's getting to the winning at some schools. Baylor again is just so special, and they always enjoyed that, but they knew besides getting the prizes and the credentials and their own recognition and pictures in the Insider with Dave Campbell, they knew that they were raising the money for the scholarships for our student athletes. And Baylor people just, that really egged them on to be successful in that.
How do you get the job done? With power. Get all the power you need in a new Ram. Allen Samuels presents Ram Power Days. Extra special savings and special factory financing on all new models. Hauling families to great places. Doing chores, working hard. Allen Samuels will help you get the job done. Ram, the highest pickup owner loyalty in America. Shop, apply, buy online. We deliver. Allen Samuels, official auto dealer of the Heart of Texas Fair and Rodeo.
Whether on the field or cheering from home, Du Bois Furniture is proud to support the Baylor Bears. If your bear cave needs updating, Du Bois Furniture is here to help. With over 59 years of our family serving yours, let our experienced sales team help you find exactly what you want. We specialize in custom upholstery, stunning dining rooms, elegant bedrooms, gorgeous leather, and top quality mattresses. Come see us in Waco and Temple or visit us online at DuBoisFurniture.com. Du Bois Furniture, where beautiful homes happen.
Now, back to the Sikkim Podcast, presented by your friend in the car business, Allen Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat.
Doug, honestly, has a heart of gold. And realistically, I think Baylor is so much better off because of Doug Smith starting here in 1998. Doug Smith raised funds for our student athletes when it just seemed an impossibility.
Visiting with Doug Smith, retiring from the Baylor Bear Foundation. And this is our Sikkim Podcast for this week, presented by Allen Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Brooke, there's probably nobody that's been involved in Baylor athletics over the past 23 years that we could mention that Doug hasn't met with, talked to, known, visited, asked for money from, all of these people. But, Doug, the relationships you've built through the years, that's been a really big part of your success, hasn't it?
I think it has, and it's just different today. Technology is so critical in this world, and I'm not sure if the people today even have experienced the type of building relationships that we had 15 or 20 years ago. But we didn't have the cell phones and all the technology. So the only way you could do it is you just go out and visit with people. And I would just set a couple days. Monday would always be in the office to work on what you needed to do and get through the weekend, which usually you either had a basketball or a football game the previous weekend. Then on Tuesday, I'd just start going out. And I said I would write notes on I want to see 10 people today. And so I dropped by. I remember Hobby Howe always, regardless of what type of meeting he was in, when I walked in and the receptionist said, Mr. Smith's here, he would stop whatever he's doing. I would walk in his office and we'd talk and have a cup of coffee, then take someone to lunch, and in the afternoon meet another person. So it just went on. And that's what there was no other way of doing it at that time but to get out and talk to people about athletics, about other people I know, about getting involved, and of course listening to John Morris on the radio.
Of course.
Yeah, exactly.
But tell us a little bit about the conversations. You mentioned, a lot of the times you weren't talking about Baylor athletics and the amount of money that you needed. You were getting to know the actual people and their families, right, and the value of that.
It was funny. Well, but then let's go through, the one time that I got kicked out of an office in my entire career.
The one time in the entire career.
And the reason that came up, we went right, Mr. Salome, Tommy Salome, we didn't talk about family. We didn't talk about dogs or his horses.
Straight business.
We talked about what he had to give. And he was a big donor to the Bear Foundation back there in 1998. He was giving $1,000 a year, and he had been doing that for some time. And so that was very important to have a person like that. Well, I brought in this seat option program, and he had 4, maybe 6, maybe even 8 seats on the 50-yard line. Well, the seat option value per seat was much more than $1,000. Right. It was about $2,500. And so I started talking, and I remember when he finally understood that the $1,000 wasn't going to keep his seats, he said, Mr. Smith, are you telling me that this $1,000 that I've been giving year in and year out is not enough anymore? And I said, yes, sir. And he got up from his chair behind his desk, and I didn't quite understand. I was hoping that he'd give me a check, understand what I was asking for. He went right to the door of his office, opened the door, and said to me, Mr. Smith, this meeting's over.
Wow.
They laugh about it today, though.
Right.
He's a good friend. He's in ill health right now, but we still smile. And he was one of the people that I would still go to his office, say, come on, Tommy, we're going to lunch at the Baylor Club or something. And we would talk about it once in a while. So he's a really good friend, but he does remember that day. Mm-hmm. He does.
Well, I do want to ask, you told us a while back that if the first time someone meets you, if they like you, you're doing something wrong.
Correct.
Tell me, that's kind of an odd thing to say. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's just, I like to have fun. So when I meet people, I always say something that I know no one else would say to them, something that's kind of negative or irks them on or something. And they kind of look at me, and then we both kind of smile and laugh. But that's what I tell people all the time. If you don't dislike me after the first time you've met me, I haven't done my job. and so that's exactly where, but it kind of breaks the ice.
Yeah.
You're most people know you're kidding. And all the times I've done that, there's been a couple people that have taken it the wrong way. But I know from doing this so long if people are going along with it or if it's not working. And a couple times I know it isn't working. So I've kind of changed topics and said, that's not going to work with them. I better not say anything. But it's just, again, I just like people. I like people having fun. And I just do that. That's just part of Doug Smith.
Kent State grad. I don't know how many people know that. What started you? What was the career path that got you into what you've done for the past 48 years?
I went to Kent on a football scholarship.
I've seen the jersey.
And,
you still have it?
I
have
do.
You seen that, Brooke?
I have not.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to have to see that.
I need to show it to you. And I led the team in receiving my junior and senior year. And Jim Trigo said, Doug, I didn't believe you. So he went back and got something from Kent State. Maybe it was a press book or something, and it had me in 68, 69, leading the team in receiving. Nice. 19 receptions one year and 21, I think it was, the next year. And most of our receivers catch that number of balls in 2 games.
Yeah, right.
Maybe even 1. So, it was a little different back then. I had a guy on the team by the name of Don Nottingham, and he set an NCAA record for number of carries in the game. I think it was 53 or 56.
Wow.
So I actually said to myself, why am I at Kent State? We're never going to throw the football.
They're just going to give it to him.
Yeah. And he and I became good friends. We lived beside one another in married student apartments, and he was a good guy, and he was the last person drafted in the 69 NFL draft. McCaffrey was the head coach of the Baltimore Colts, and he was a Kent State graduate. And so they were looking down the list, and he saw this name, he saw a name, and school he graduated from Kent State. He said, okay, I'm leaving. Take the guy from Kent State, and it was Don Nottingham. So he went with Baltimore, and a year after that, he was traded, or somehow he ended up down with the Miami Dolphins, and he played with the Dolphins. He was Larry Zonka's backup for a number of years. He was on that 17-0 undefeated team and everything. So, yeah, that was Kent State. I still had a couple times. I wasn't that good a football player when I got there. I could catch a football, but I was pretty slow. But, I would get – these linemen would just kill me, and these bull in the ring exercises and everything. So I got even with them because Kent State actually had 2 hockey rinks. And so I went one day and I told these guys, I was so upset. They were just killing me. I mean, and they were dirty. I mean, it was bad, but I guess you did that. I said, okay.
Let's take it to the ice.
Yeah, let's go play a little hockey. And they didn't know what I meant. They didn't know that I'd played hockey, which I did. And so we got out on a hockey rink, and I'll tell you, I've never been so mean in my whole life. I tripped them, I cross-checked them, I elbowed them, I knocked most of them the linemen could barely stand on skates.
Sure, right.
And I would kill them. I'd knock every one of them down. So we did that. I still remember the first game, the first time we did that, and I went out on the field the next day, and I could sense that they had a little more respect for me.
I would hope so.
Yeah. So I don't know why I brought that up, but that's something that because I did like hockey.
Yeah.
I did like hockey.
So out of Kent State, what was your career path?
Well, actually, Mike Lude was the athletic director, and Mike. I was in the I started off in admissions, so I spent a few years in admissions as the assistant director of admissions, and then I became the assistant director of alumni relations for just 1 year. And then Mike Lude, who's the athletic director, came to me and he said, "Hey, Doug, I like you. I want to start a fundraising organization. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Yeah, fine, sure, let's do it." I think I got a $500 raise at the time, and started the Blue and Gold Club.
Well, great.
So that's what started me into fundraising. So I then Mike Lude asked that I go to a fundraising convention in Beverly Hills, California, and I said, "Fine, everybody knows Hollywood and Beverly Hills. If there's an excuse to get a comp trip out there, I'll do it."
Why not?
And so I have we got time for this?
Oh yeah,
absolutely. It's a podcast. We got time for everything.
Okay, so I get in the elevator. I check into my room and I get back onto the elevator to go downstairs just to wander around. And this guy walks onto the elevator, goes down 2 floors, doors open, and this guy walks in, and all he's wearing is white socks. Okay. So,
Okay.
so as it is me, I said, "There's some nice shoes you're wearing."
Yeah.
And he kind of laughed, and that started us off. And he said his name was Lynn Elifson, and Lynn Elifson was the chairman of the entire conference, athletic fundraising conference. And he was from Fresno, California. And so we hit it off on an elevator, all because I said, "Nice shoes you're wearing."
Because he didn't want to wear shoes.
So, and before the end of the conference, he says, "Doug, there's going to be an opening up at the University of Pacific in Stockton, California. How would you like to interview for that?" And I said, "That'll give me a couple more days in California." I didn't think I would like it, but I said, "Sure." So I interviewed there, and the next thing I knew, they hired me, and I accepted the job. Then I called back to Kent and told my wife, "Do you like California?"
Oh, gosh.
Oh, no. I hope so.
And she said, "Yes, why?" I said, "We're moving to California." I took a job in Stockton, which we didn't know. So that kind of got me going there. Cedric Dempsey was the AD at the University of Pacific at the time. And, he was the AD at Arizona for a while, and he was the president of the NCAA, was he not, John?
That's right.
For quite some time.
That's right.
15 years or something like that. And so Ced and I got along very well. I'll still remember a trip. I don't know why I'm remembering these things, but he and his wife June, I still remember her name, June, they were always late for the bus. Okay, so one trip, and I was in charge of all the buses. And one time I told Cedric as he was heading back home to pick up his wife, I said, "Now, we're to leave here at 2 o'clock. We'll wait for you till 2:15, but at 2:15, we're leaving." Well, 2:15 came, and then 2:20, I said, "Hey, we're taking off." So all the donors that were on the bus, we took off and headed to the airport. And so as we were driving along the highway, and I was sitting right behind the bus driver, and I kind of looked out, and I see this taxi cab going by me. And in the taxi cab were Cedric Dempsey and his wife.
Beating the buses there so they wouldn't get left.
So, there were things that you would do back then that you just, it was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed it and had a really good time. And you got to remember that you're having a good time, but you're also raising money for those student athletes, the scholarships of the student athletes. That's what kept me going all the time. That's what I think a lot of the people enjoyed doing, because you look at our student athletes today, holy cow, they're just fantastic. They're unbelievable human beings, and why would anybody, any fan, not like any Baylor student athlete? Amazing.
If you need a trailer, Flat Rock Trailers has got you covered. From light-duty single-axle utility trailers to the Big Tex tandem duals. We also carry a full line of enclosed cargo trailers. Need a motorcycle trailer? We've got them. Need a dump trailer? We've got the largest selection in the state. Oilfield trailers? We carry a full line of Big Tex trailers to handle all your needs. Trailer repairs? We repair all makes and models. We'll even rent you a trailer if you need to use one for a day. Flat Rock Trailers, your #1 source for all your trailer needs. Find us at flatrocktrailers.com.
TNG can, and here's why.
To say my wife and I have a lot to clean is an understatement. So we go to TNG Chemical, where the pros know what cleaning solutions to use and give us detailed instructions on exactly how to use them. We never got that kind of advice from any other stores. And the prices at TNG are great. From general household cleaners to odor control solutions for our pets. We go to TNG Chemical and Supply. That's why.
TNG Chemical and Supply. That's why.
You're listening to the Sick'em Podcast, a production of Baylor Athletics. Here again are Brooke Bednarz and John Morris.
I just, want to thank him from the bottom of my heart and thank God, that they put us together and for him giving me that chance, because it wasn't like he had a plethora of, recommendations as far as me being a quality fundraiser. And I just, by him taking a chance, not knowing me, and even though we engaged each other while I was coaching, we didn't know each other that well at all. And for him taking a chance on me, was something that I'll never forget and appreciate forever. And being one of my best friends.
You mentioned Baylor. We kind of touched on, kind of bounced around your career and all the different places you've been. But when it got to the point of making the decision to stay at Baylor, what prompted that? Because that was new for you, to build and develop an athletic development program and then to stay and kind of see the fruits of your labor and see a successful season. And you went through several different coaches, different administrations. So what was it about Baylor and Waco that made you feel comfortable enough to say, this is where I want home to be?
I think it's two things. One, the people, as I've said before, and I always will say, Baylor people are so nice. They were so nice. They were just different. So that played a major factor, because if you don't like the people, I never know all the student athletes. I know a lot more about the donors than I do about the student athletes. So you have to like the donors, and as I just said, the people were just outstanding. Down to earth, sincere, really wanting to help. But then the second thing to me was, why don't I stay and see what our success can produce? And so I wanted to stay and, build a program and then kind of sit back a little bit and let our board take over and raise the money. And we had some great presidents early on: Kerry Gray, John Burleson, Brett Bean, Hobby Howell, Chris Manning. You could go on, and they were wonderful people. And then, John, you will remember, who was the gentleman that just passed away about 4 years ago? He was 91 years old. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but anyways, I'll think of it. But just wonderful people, and then just wanting to see what this hard work would do and what the end product would be. And it just, I'd never done it at any other school. I just, worked on it, then was asked by someone else, hey, why don't you come into this school and that school? And I finally said, no, I want to see what, quote, your fruits of the labor are. And that kind of kept me here. But people, I'm a people person, and you have to enjoy and like the people.
The benefit of that is you get to work with these people and see some real growth facility-wise, and you've done that here at Baylor. I mean, you think about the Hires Complex, where we're sitting right now and recording this podcast. Look across the river at McLean Stadium, the soccer facility, other events like the bank. I mean, facilities like the bank.
Indoor.
The indoor football practice facility, all of those. I mean, you've got to be proud when you look around and see how our facilities have not only grown to keep up with other schools, but surpassed other schools we compete with.
Absolutely. I still remember, you can tell me the year we hosted the NCAA tennis tournaments. Mm-hmm. And I remember we had some type of reception the second night, or I think it was the second night we were there, and there was 8 men's teams and 8 women's teams, so there were 16 teams. 2 of the teams was ours. We had both our men and women participating, but it had given the other schools, their players had an opportunity to wander around campus. And I remember talking to one of the ladies that was on Cal's tennis team. They were one of the teams participating that year, and they said, we can't believe your facilities here. We've seen nothing like this, and we travel all over, the West Coast and the country, and no school that they'd seen had the facilities. And again, a lot of them had just been built and were just opened. And they said, not only are they beautiful, but they're all together. They said at Cal, you have to walk 15 minutes from one side of the campus to maybe the tennis building to to their dorm. There was a 15-minute walk on the other side of the campus. Well, everything was together here, so that hit home with me. That wow, I've been a part of raising money for most of these facilities. Bob Simpson is one of my best friends today. Although I asked him for some Dodger tickets.
Didn't happen?
It didn't happen. So it didn't happen. So our relationship, no.
It's rocky right now. Yeah. Maybe next week.
Right.
After the World Series.
He's a great guy, but he's always been a good friend. Just so many people. Billy Williams and the soccer facility. Jay Allison and the indoor football facility. I mean, he was great. Although I will say, I just was really friends with him. Ian McCaw had the relationship with him, and it really worked out. But you just talk about the different facilities and the different people. Billy Williams, though, was really a favorite of mine, and he passed away from cancer. Oh gosh, eight years ago, maybe 10 years ago. But he was super. And I'll go over that story.
Yes, I would love to hear about that.
The first time that I really asked Billy for any money, it was early on here, and Billy came to me one day and said, "Doug, I'm in a position now to make a sizable gift to Baylor, and where do you think that money should be restricted to?" And I said, well, look at Billy. This was at a football game. I said, let's get together. Let me talk to Ian McCaw, who was the AD at the time, because he knows better than I do or anyone where the need is greatest. So I went and talked to Ian, and he said, Doug, let me get back to you. And he came back to me a couple days later and told me women's soccer. And I said, holy cow, he's a football player. We're going to ask him for money for women's soccer. And he said, that's where the need is. So Billy and I had a little tradition of meeting and talking. He lived in Chicago, actually had a home in Miami, but also up in Chicago. So we would get together and just talk in one of the empty suites before the games. And so he said, Doug, did you find out where you want me to make that gift to? And I said, I do. And he said, what sport is it? And I said, women's soccer. And he just kind of blew up and he said, women's soccer? I'm a football player. I'm not giving any money to a women's program. This was early on. And he said, Doug, you need to find somewhere else where that money can go. And I said, Billy, let's just take it easy. Think about this a bit, and we're back home in 2 weeks. So let's meet here in 2 weeks, because he was, at that time, was coming down for every game. He had seats in Bear Heights. Remember Bear Heights and Bear Place at the Floyd Casey. So I said, let's do it. So 2 weeks later, he came back, and he said, well, Doug, did you discuss this with Ian? And I said, I did. And he said, okay, where's the money going? And as I said, women's soccer, I said to myself, I just hope I'm not messing up a 7-figure gift to Baylor Athletics. And surprisingly, he looked at me and he said, you're sure that's where Ian wants it to go? And I said, yes. He said, it's going to women's soccer.
Wow.
So I was scared to death. But then the other thing, I then called, I think it was after the game, maybe it was on Monday. I called Marcy Jobson, who at that time was the head coach, and I told her that we just had a donor make $1 million gift to women's soccer, and I didn't ask her to do this. I was hoping that she might call, and so I gave the phone number, but she got every one of the lady soccer players to write a personal note to Billy, and that started a relationship between Billy and women's soccer that lasted for a number of years and a lot more money for them. So that was good. But that's an incident that I'll always remember. He just exploded. I've never had a donor. He wasn't really mad.
Yeah.
It was. And he kind of scared me when he said women's soccer. He
he's
kind
a football player.
Screamed.
Hey.
Yeah. So that was a good one. So I liked Billy a lot, and again, it was a lot of people, raising the money. I keep telling people it's team. And as I've mentioned here, it's a team. It's not individual. So everybody worked together, and it eventually happens. So, just like you can't be successful in football or any team sport unless everyone's, producing. You can have the greatest quarterback in the country, but if his line doesn't protect him, and if his running backs can't run with the football and the receivers can't catch the ball, I don't care. You're just not going to be successful. So you've asked me that before. I've never really thought of how proud I am. It's just that's kind of your job.
Yeah.
And so you do that, and you enjoy what you do, and you get to know so many great people.
How do you get the job done? With power. Get all the power you need in a new Ram. Allen Samuels presents Ram Power Days. Extra special savings and special factory financing on all new models. Hauling families to great places. Doing chores, working hard. Allen Samuels will help you get the job done. Ram, the highest pickup owner loyalty in America. Shop, apply, buy online. We deliver. Allen Samuels, official auto dealer of the Heart of Texas Fair and Rodeo.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Salsa drap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
This is the Sick'em Podcast, presented by your friend in the car business, Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat in Waco. Online at allensamuelsdcj.com.
Wow, I know Doug and Lorraine, we're going to miss you both. Baylor University, Baylor Athletics, our coaches, our staff, our student athletes are going to miss you. We're unbelievably grateful for everything that you did for our student athletes, for our staff, for our athletics department. Personally, I'm going to miss you, not just as a colleague, but as a friend. But also know that you're not far away, and Baylor Athletics, Baylor University is your family, and will always be your family. And we love you, Doug. We love you, Lorraine, and just thank you both.
I do want to ask you, McLean Stadium. That is a big, prominent, it's something that stands on the banks of the Brazos. People, it's kind of a marker right now of when you enter into Waco. And you played a large role in that and met with the founders to make that project possible. Is something that you told us, you didn't truly believe it was going to be built when it was built until you secured those donations. Walk us through some of those conversations that you were able to have and why that project was so special for you.
Well, I think to me it's the nicest football stadium in the country. Now, it's certainly not the largest, but to me it's the nicest. And John, the press box up there is just beautiful. Everything.
Yep. Amen.
It's so big. I really got on. Who was our sports information director at the time?
Heath.
No.
Nick.
Yeah, Nick Joes.
Right.
I couldn't believe when Nick told me how big the press box was going to be. I told Nick, I said, Nick, you're taking away room where I can put additional suites and get additional money, and you're taking this for the media. And anyways, Nick,
which people like John and I are very grateful
we appreciate,
for.
Right.
Nick had more influence over Ian than I did, but I do remember that. But it was really something that I just look back at, and no one thought we could have a stadium like that. I mean, particularly at Baylor University after Floyd Casey. And Floyd Casey was great. The history there is unbelievable. But this stadium is just the the best stadium, I think, as I've said, in the country. And the people that really played a key role were the founders. If the founders hadn't, ponied up early and, given us those sizable gifts to start, I think we probably would have still built the stadium, but it wouldn't have opened in 2014. And Ian, I remember, expressed to me one day, says, Doug, we don't have much time. We got to raise $60 million in the next 10 days or something. And he said, but what we're going to do is you, me, and Art, we're going to go visit the potential founders. And I think we started with a list of 10. And again, it involved university development. They had a couple people, and we started going to visit. And we had a couple turn downs, but we also had some very nice gifts. And the two that I remember the most, John Eddie Williams and Walter Humphrey. John Eddie and I met at a restaurant, and we started talking, and we finally got to the point where I had to ask him for some money, because we were halfway through our meal, and we had put down our utensils and just started talking in earnest. And I mentioned a figure to John Eddie, which I thought was reasonable. It wasn't as high as I had hoped, but Ian kind of told me, why don't you start at this? And then he comes back almost within seconds, and his figure was so much lower and so far apart from what I had asked. And then I went to another figure after a few minutes, and then he went down to another figure. So I went down a little bit, he came up a little bit, and for whatever reason, I don't know why I said it, and I said, John Eddie, why don't we just split that and enjoy the rest of our meal? And he immediately stands up, puts his hand out, and we shake hands, and that was the deal.
Wow.
So that was a very memorable lunch with John, and he's still my friend. John Eddie has invited me into the suite this Saturday. And,
oh, great.
Yeah, so I'm sure I'll see him. He wasn't at the Kansas game. He was out on his ranch in West Texas, but he and Sheridan are great people. So we did that, and then Walter Humphrey, we got a major gift from, but he didn't want one of the founder suites. He wanted up, so he wanted on the regular suite level, and his suite is on the right dead center on the 50-yard line. But we went to Beaumont, flew into Beaumont, and he was waiting for us, and a car took us to a tennis club, some private club in Beaumont, and we were in, and we sat down, and we were just getting ready to start our spiel, and Walter gets up and says, look at Doug, and we had sent him a proposal. University Development had put together a beautiful proposal, and as a matter of fact, the amount of money we asked was what John Eddie said to ask. He says, now don't ask for anything less, and certainly don't ask for anything more. I've talked to him, and he's ready to give this. So as we get ready, he just stands up and he says, look, gentlemen, I'm going to give you what you ask for. So let's enjoy lunch.
Wow!
And so I didn't make an ask.
Yeah.
Ian didn't talk about the Big 12, and Art didn't talk about football. We just had a very enjoyable lunch. So
how about that?
That was another one. So that was kind of neat. That I didn't have to ask for any money, and we still got a very nice gift from him. So that was another incident that I really won't forget. And as a matter of fact, I talked to Sheila earlier in the week, and she's going to be up here, so I'm going to go by, I hope, and see Sheila, because there's people that I just know. I've known them for a long time. And it's really neat to do that.
Well, that's the relationship that you've cultivated through the years, and it's genuine, Doug. It's really genuine on your part to these people, and they feel that, and they're dealing with a friend of theirs, when we're talking about large sums of money that these people, it's a donation to Baylor, but it is through you because of the relationship that you cultivated there.
That's true. And, it was a lot of fun taking the interior decorator for all the founder suites to meetings with them. It was just super. One of them that I'll remember a long time, probably forever, is when we met with Clifton and Betsy Robinson. And so, unbeknown to me, Betsy had asked Debbie Sarton, Nell Hawkins, and one other person, Lauren Schwartz, I think was the third person, to come up. And between them, they would go over everything. So, we had patches of whatever the materials are for the chairs and types and what color you wanted the wood and what the flooring was going to be like, tile or wood or whatever, and what the ceiling looked like. And so Clifton and I looked at one another because the lady, the interior decorator, and these three ladies were just talking. And Clifton said, "Come on, Doug, we don't have to. we don't have to be in this meeting." And so we went out and just talked about other things. And probably about an hour later, we walked back in to see how it was, and everything had been handled.
That's a good move. Good move on your part. Brooke, you need to know this about Doug.
Yes.
He is my favorite Canadian. Favorite Canadian here in the athletic department, which was a status that I bestowed on you, Doug, very early on, and when I found out that he was from Toronto. So I would love to introduce him as my favorite Canadian. Well, then we had Ian, who you mentioned, our athletic director. Ian McCall was here, and Ian was Canadian.
Oh, no.
So Doug, graciously became my second favorite. I would introduce him as the second favorite Canadian. Now Joey Scrivano is here, Canadian also. But, Doug, you're in my book. You're my favorite Canadian.
Well, the story on that is, and John and I talked about it a couple days ago, is he would always introduce me as our favorite Canadian. Well, the first time we had a function that I was at along with Ian, they would introduce me before they introduced Ian, who was the keynote speaker. And so I still remember the first time we did this, and he said, "And now our favorite Canadian, Doug Smith." And then when that ended, he introduced Ian McCaw. Well, when the program ended, I went up to John and said, "John, Ian's from Toronto, Canada, too, so you better start saying he's our favorite Canadian." And
we want to keep our jobs.
That's right.
We kind of laughed at that, and he never called me our favorite Canadian again. Yeah.
Until now.
Now
you are.
Here you are. You're back to the favorite Canadian.
There should be a plaque on the wall, Doug, that says, "You're my favorite Canadian."
Big red maple leaf.
The maple leaf, exactly.
That is awesome.
As you leave after this many years here at Baylor, after this much success, in your chosen field, and this many years in the business also, what's top of mind with you as you kind of pack things up and move into retirement?
I think I've had a good career. I've really enjoyed it. I've met a lot of friends, made a lot of friends, and will, as hopefully for a number of years to come here in Waco, will know many, many people. So, now looking back and seeing what the athletic department looks like from a facility standpoint, and then knowing the different people, I have a story on that football stadium. I'm telling you, when they gave, and I'm not answering your question correctly, but when they used to give tours to the people, they were probably 15-minute and 20-minute tours. And so then I would ask them, do you want the nickel tour, the quarter tour, or the dollar tour?
Yeah, right.
And if it was the dollar tour, and some people didn't, they just wanted to kind of go through. But if people really wanted, I'd have a story on everything. We'd do the dollar tour, and it'd be a good hour. And I would tell them it depends on what you want, because I'll give you a story on just about everything in this stadium if you want. If you only want 20 minutes, then we'll do that. So some good stories, and it was always very enjoyable giving tours to people. And again, the great people, Baylor people, loved the stadium. They couldn't believe what we had. And it's just funny. So I guess the stadium, but like I said, there was so much done by so many people. But I look back, and that's probably, to me, the biggest accomplishment that I was involved in, the building of McLean Stadium. Wow. And, I see Drayton. I'll go by and say hello to Drayton, and he and I, shake hands, and we have our masks on and everything. But he's another really good friend. So they all are. Paul Foster got married in Playa Carmen. Well, Lorraine and I we used to go to Playa Carmen. We went to Playa Carmen 5 or 6 times. So here's Paul Foster and me talking in his suite about where he stayed in Playa Carmen. Now, needless to say, where he stayed and where I stayed in Playa Carmen were different levels. Different levels. And we both had detached retinas. So we could talk about weddings in Playa Carmen and our experiences with detached retinas. And so he was in the suite at the game against Kansas. So I went in and we started talking a little bit. And the first thing he asked me, "Hi, Doug, how's your eye?" Yeah. And things like that. So you just... They're just great experiences. Yep. Great experiences.
What do you think you'll miss the most? You've gotten to do a lot of amazing things. You mentioned, you were at RG3's Heisman ceremony, all the trips with all the donors and the funny stories that you have here and there. But what will you miss the most as you embark on the next chapter, which is retirement?
Can I give one more story? Because you set up in RG3.
Oh, yeah. I love this. I love your stories.
Okay.
I would love to hear it.
So I shouldn't, but I'll say it. So, yeah, we had a great time up in New York. Art Browse and I were there at the airport waiting for Bob Simpson's plane to come in, and then we flew up to New York, and we went out to dinner. Art went over to see RG. So we all went out to dinner. Well, then dinner ends, and it's probably midnight because we got in late, and we went to this restaurant, and so it's midnight, and we start back, and I get a call from another donor, Bruce Jolish.
Oh, yeah, Bruce.
Yeah, you know Bruce.
Sure.
And Bruce said, "Come on, Doug, we're going to get together. We're going to go and have a drink so we can tell everybody that we toasted Baylor and the Heisman Trophy in downtown New York City." Nice. So at that time, there was nothing open. We walked and walked and walked, and here we're walking in downtown New York City. Well, it was around, what's the park?
Central Park?
Central Park. And because our hotel was right up in there. But here, it never occurred to us at the time, that maybe you shouldn't be walking by yourself around New York. But that was Bruce Jolish. He calls me. It was about midnight or maybe a couple minutes before midnight. "Come on, Doug." And I said, "Bruce, I'm going back to my hotel." And he said, "Doug, you're in New York City, so let's get together."
And we won the Heisman.
Yeah, that's right. That's really that was really neat with him. So, and I got to meet in the Heisman. I wandered off by myself, and I ended up going into a room that I wasn't supposed to be in, and it was reserved. This was the night of the Heisman, but it was early. And it was reserved for the parents of all the finalists.
Wow.
That night, and so I was in talking to the parents, and I didn't realize that I wasn't supposed to be there. And then this security guard comes up and said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I don't know. I just walked in here." But I had spent a good 15 to 20 minutes talking to the parents and how their sons and where they went to school and everything. And I wasn't even supposed to be in that room. So the security guard asked me to leave pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You're
Great
building
memory.
relationships.
Yeah, great.
That's what you do.
So what will you miss most?
People, the people. So I hope we can keep in touch with one another. That's my biggest fear, is once I leave, it kind of shuts everything down, and I won't be able to have a cup of coffee with anybody or go to lunch with anybody. So I'm hoping that's not going to end. But honestly, that's my biggest fear when I get ready to go into retirement. And how long I stay in retirement, I don't know. I know I have some people that said, Doug, you're a pretty popular person in this community, so you'll probably have people asking you if you'd be interested in working for them. But I've also had a couple good friends say, Doug, you take 3 to 4 months and you don't do anything. You just sit back and wait and relax and evaluate if indeed you want to do something. So that's I'm going to do, but I'm going to miss the people, and I'm going to miss the Saturdays. It's just forever. It's either a basketball game or a football game or going tennis, some sporting event. Baylor is always playing something on a Saturday, and so getting up with my Goldens at about 6 a.m. and getting it done to get ready for whatever event I'm going to go to, I think I'm gonna miss that.
Well, the one good thing is you told us that you're a alumni by choice.
I am.
For a couple of times, I think. And so you get to be a Baylor Bear for life.
Correct.
And just because you retire does not mean you're no longer a part of the Baylor family. I think John would agree with me that extends well into retirement and that the door is always going to be open for you.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, I do. I love Baylor University. I'll always love Baylor University. 23 years of my life.
Well said, Doug. We appreciate you. You have a heart of gold, and you have given so much to Baylor. And it's great that we can visit with you and get you to tell these stories and share these stories with everybody. So best wishes to you and Lorraine. God's blessings on you as you go into retirement or whatever is next for you. But we really are going to miss you around here.
Well, thanks, John. Appreciate it so much.
Doug, thanks
very much. Appreciate both of you.
All right. For Brooke Bednarz, I'm John Morris. Doug Smith, our guest on this week's Sikkim podcast. We hope we enjoyed it, and hope you'll join us next week for another edition of the Sikkim podcast.
You've been listening to the Sikkim podcast, presented by your friend in the car business, Alan Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat in Waco. Online at AlanSamuelsDCJ.com. The Sikkim podcast has been a production of Baylor Athletics.